Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. So I wanted to talk about a technology that I don't really hear getting a huge amount of press, but I think it's very important and it coincides with a lot of what I was talking about in terms of using carbon sequestration as a form of energy generation. It's compressed air energy storage. We already have seen a few of these sites go into place, and essentially what it is you compress air, and as you compress it, it energizes, right? So the condensation creates heat. Now, there are a few different ways of using compressed air energy storage, and one of them is what they call adiabatic, where they take the heat energy from when the air is compressed under pressure and they then transfer that heat to some sort of a medium where it's stored, and then when they're ready to release the air, they return that heat, and so that repressurizes essentially the air, and that's what they're using to regenerate the energy from the air under pressure. And that adiabatic process is what brings it really close into the 90% range for efficiency between the energy that it takes to compress the air versus the energy that you get back out of it. There's also a diabatic, and this is something that I mentioned when we use things like air conditioners and things of that nature. We're just venting the heat out to the atmosphere. Well, at some point, with the compressed air energy storage, you're going to have to get that heat back. Those diabatic cycles, they're far less efficient than the adiabatic where the energy is stored. This is something like I was speaking about with the Navajo generating plant. I would like to see a site like that converted from coal generation over to some sort of a solar concentration, but this compressed air energy storage system is something that I could see used in combination with that. And rather than that typical adiabatic cycle where it's the compressed air that's then re-energized, you could actually just scour that heat and use that to help feed the steam turbines for a condensed solar plant. So it sort of combines the two technologies. It's what they would refer to as a heat recovery steam generation system. But the thing that I'm most interested in about this compressed air energy storage technology is its ability to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. The thing about carbon dioxide is it will start to freeze at a much higher temperature than other gases, but also under pressure, it will start to concentrate as well. And so this makes a very easy way of pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Sequestering that carbon dioxide is going to be another issue. It's something that we're going to have to find something to do with it, whether Elon Musk wants to bore a whole bunch of holes for us to store it in, or we figure out a way to maybe send it to Mars to actually start creating a pseudo atmosphere. Doesn't really matter to me. The carbon dioxide does have to be pulled out of the atmosphere. Now, one of the issues with using this condensed air energy storage and the sort of system that I'm talking about, where that's just a component of it with a heat recovery steam generation power plant, one of the issues with using that with outside atmosphere is even as much as our CO2 levels have raised, they still only represent about 400 parts per million, which is 0.04% of the actual atmosphere. So you'd have to condense a lot of air in order to capture, a significant enough amount of CO2 to make it worth it. But here's where my idea comes in. Rather than having office buildings that have to circulate air and they use a diabatic cycle when you're talking about things like air conditioning, why not suck the air out of office buildings where the concentration of CO2 can be 3-4 times that of the outside ambient air, sometimes even higher, because the thing is, you have to actually circulate air in an office building in order to keep CO2 at acceptable levels. But they're finding that even those acceptable levels, which represent as much as double the concentration of CO2 in the outside atmosphere, well, those are actually having an impact on people's cognition, memory. All sorts of health effects are being attributed to high concentrations of CO2 in closed workspace. So something like this, you could pull the air out of the office building, compress it using that compressed air energy storage. You use the heat that you pull out of it to run a heat recovery steam turbine generator, but you continue that compression until you can actually eliminate the CO2 from that mixture or sequester it from that mixture completely. But here's the great thing. When you vent that pressurized gas back out, you can run it through an intercooler essentially. So one, it's now, has the CO2 essentially scrubbed from it, but it's cooler air. So now you're cycling it back into these warm office buildings. Maybe they also have server farms inside. Maybe they're just located in hot climates. But you essentially have a free air conditioning system at this point. You're sequestering carbon dioxide, and you're actually generating net power to run the building with. So it's just an interesting concept. Again, like I said, we'd have to figure out what to do with the CO2 once it was pulled out of the air. But I feel like these types of implementations are very important. And, it's not going to be good enough to just go neutral in terms of carbon dioxide production. We are now seeing, way higher carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere than we did in pre-industrial times, and we're seeing the results of it as well. So not only are we going to have to go to a net zero carbon, we might actually have to go to a net negative carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions. So I'd love to hear what you think of this idea. Is it a little too pie in the sky? Is it something that you could see, workplaces and office buildings in the United States and other countries start to implement, scrubbing CO2 out of workplace environments and storing it? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, helps me come up with these harebrained ideas that I can put out there for the community. And thank you for watching.